Hello and welcome to the Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Products and Services here at Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to present Dion McCormick, no relation, our Supreme Solutions Engineer, as well as Sarah Mitchell, who's in charge of our documentation department. Today, Dion will be going through a quick presentation, I believe, involving the control bar, but we're also here to answer your questions, and we have an announcement about a new version of Alpha Anywhere, which we're going to cover today as well. Of course, we're here to take your questions, and you can type those questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. So let's get started. Hello, Dion, are you there?
Yes, I am. How are you guys doing today?
I'm doing great. Let me make you the presenter.
Cool. Thank you
And
very much.
there you are. Awesome.
Yeah. I have to apologize ahead of time. There might be a little background noise. There's work being done around this area, so I tried to get it, tried to find my isolated location, but wasn't able to do that. So, but thank you everybody for taking time to visit with us this week. We have some really fun stuff to cover. First, we have a new production release out. Want to kind of cover some of the highlights of that, and more importantly, kind of discuss where we're at on our roadmap. Also, some really neat, cool features that are being put in there that are going to be play into some really strategic things we're doing the balance of the year and next year. Also, along with that, we have a demonstration of a control bar capability. It's something that I think you'll really find, and actually something that we're going to drive back into the TabbedUI replacement, kind of something we do there. So it all links together from that standpoint. But I've got a really nice, simple example of how you can use a specific method in the control bar I'd like to share today. And I think you'll find it's really useful for many things, not only mobile applications, but desktop ones. Really, it lets that control bar go to the next level. Also, I want to say thank you very much. We have online Sarah with us, and Sarah has been working very diligently getting the latest release put together and put out, kind of coordinating a lot of pieces. We're very excited about that. And in fact, if we go to and I'll go ahead and copy this. Yep, this is it. Let me go ahead and copy that. I'm going to put that into the chat window. We do have a new production release, and that location is right there. And this was released right off the presses, really like 7:55 a.m. Eastern time. So pretty exciting stuff there. Along with that, let me go ahead and go to the release notes, and let's cover a couple key things that are going on there. A lot of it, to be honest, were a lot of under the covers kind of work. There's not a ton of really big, massive new features, but there are definitely some new features and capabilities that were brought into it. One which I think is really powerful is called the list and column selector, which allows you to put into a control bar the ability to show and hide columns in a list that's displayed, which gives your users a lot more capability. The other area which a lot of work has been done on there is in the REST service area. And I'm going to come back and do some really cool demonstrations in the very near future around the REST services capability. Again, the world is moving to microservices, API-driven organizations. And I really want to show you how Alpha has invested an enormous amount of time, energy to put it in place so you can take advantage of all those capabilities. So an example, and I won't get into the weeds here, but you have different kind of transactions that can happen through a RESTful API. You can have a GET, which is basically get some data. You can post data where you submit data, but you also have other kind of variants. They're called verbs. One is called patch, which is often used like if you're doing an update control. So the API environment continues to mature and improve and get solid and easier to use. And I can't wait to demonstrate more of that down the road from there. Also, there's some other features that were rolled in, and you can see here, actually, let me grab this and go and put it in here in case you want to go spend a little time watching that. But we can have things like the new logical values in a checkbox, a lot of things around the list control. And actually one I really like, which we're going to come back and demonstrate, is selecting the active control bar layout based on the current panel card. This is not necessarily a new feature, but it's a capability that shows you how to do this. And that's very handy if you have think of it as a user interface, and depending on the context of where the person is, you want to show essentially a different control bar or menu at the top. Well, often managing that becomes kind of a pain. You have to think, oh, if you click here, I've got to run this little code to say update the control bar because I'm going to be on this next page. Well, that takes away a lot of that work. So I want to come back and do that in our next session, if not the next one. Excuse me, cough. Because it's a really nice behavior that makes your life as a developer much easier. Once you have it set up, it just works. And then you can focus more on the content and less on the mechanisms that are going on through there. Sarah, any other key things that I want to kind of cover? One thing I did want to mention was that we did have a release recently on the 5th of May. We did a turn because one of the items is that if you have embedded objects, and I'll show you an example of that, there was a gotcha where you have to make sure an ID is set or you get kind of a weird error. That's been fixed in the new production release. So again, if you're using embedded objects, this release had an issue. There was a hot fix for it, but now you can just use the current production release to work around that from that standpoint there. Again, I'm sorry I interrupted, but any other things, Sarah, that you'd like to highlight or you think our team would like to know?
No, this release was really mostly focused on putting in some bug fixes that were found with the last release and making it more stable.
Great, which is always a good thing. Again, like to use production releases versus pre-release. And there were a number of little things that were found, and I'm glad to have those all kind of ironed out. Excellent, excellent. And again, not that you're going to be finding stuff, but if you do find, you can go to help, send a bug report right within the development environment, and that will send a report to our team, and it will copy what version you're on, et cetera. And I think that's really helpful. If you do come across something, let us know. We definitely want to know and continue to make this a really industrial strength solution from there. So with that, thank you very much, Sarah. What I'd like to spend a few minutes going through is a demonstration of what's called the edit control in the control bar. So I'm going to pop back real quick here. We're focusing a lot on the user interface, building effective user interfaces. We have been talking for the last few weeks about a TabbedUI replacement. Actually, this feature isn't even in TabbedUI, but it's something we can use to enhance a TabbedUI. To do different functions within it. But what we're going to cover today is called the text control. So let me go ahead and do the demonstration of the component. And again, if you'd like a copy of this, send it to guides@alphasoftware.com. Be glad to provide you a copy of this. Remember, when we do these demos, we will use the AE demo Northwind connection string. And the reason we do that is that's kind of built in. It's easier for you to set up, so you don't have to worry about, setting up your own database and everything else. We try to keep it to that. So when you do get this and bring it in, just make sure you have a connection, a demo Northwind, and more importantly, that you have gone in and pointed it to your location. So as you can see on mine, I'm using a parallel, so it's got a certain address that includes my Dropbox information, which is where I store this. But in your case, it may be different. So you have to just click build, click here, pick it on your desktop, and then you're good to go, and then everything should just run. So it'll make it a little easier to do that. So let me go ahead and show you this. So the idea behind this is I have a list control, and that list control is based on customers. And what I'd like to do in here is be able to search these customers. And what's nice is list controls have built-in searching capability, which make life really easy when you want to do simple kind of keyword searches, things like that. But what I wanted to do was, instead of having that search somewhere in the user interface, I actually wanted it in the control bar. So you'll notice up here, I have a data entry field using a watermark, a button that clicks here to search, and a button to clear it. So I can click here, type in, say, maybe BLA, and hit search, and you'll see that it searches this area here. And then I can remove that, and then what it does is it gets rid of all that, and then I can do another search there. Now, the important thing about this is that these are all based on, and I'm going to show you pre-made controls that Alpha will build for us, but what we need to do is migrate those into the control bar. And the reason I want them in the control bar is two reasons. One is, as you can see, it creates a very tight representation. I'm not taking up more space. I can spend as much of my space, my valuable real estate, on the list itself, maybe having multiple lists, etc., and here. Now, the other thing that's important about that, and it kind of goes back to that other demonstration we'll do very soon, is that since it's in the control bar, I can show and hide it. I can have it present in different ways, such as a disclosure. Right now, I'm embedding it into the actual control bar here, but let's have different layouts. I could have different layouts with different search parameters. So the control bar gives you a lot of flexibility on creating very compact, tight, and task-focused interfaces. And so by having it in the control bar, I unlock a lot of really nice features and capabilities within that. So let's go ahead and that's the design of it. Let's go ahead and walk through how I built this so you can see how you can do this. And what I want to stress is that one of the coolest things is that Alpha will build a lot of things for you, and then you can then take and move those around to where you want them to be. And so that's a key concept that we'll use during this presentation. So with that, make sure if you have any questions on this, go to your questions and answer area of the Go to Our Webinar control panel and put those in there. If you have questions on other things, we'll be glad to try and help out on that. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new UX here. So I'm going to use the UX component, and we'll go here. So I have a blank UX. And so I want to go ahead and start by putting in some structure. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a panel card. And you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put in a panel header, and I'm going to include a control bar in that panel header. So I've got a control bar in there. Now, remember, when a control bar gets created, it's kind of empty. So if I were to run this, you really wouldn't see anything. In fact, it's going to tell us that the control bar doesn't have any control. So I want to go ahead and go in right away, go to items, and add a control bar item. And that item is going to be just HTML title. So I just want to put a title so something shows up in the control bar. And I'll go list search control bar example or demonstration. And I'm just doing this to kind of have something in my control bar. I'm going to go to my layout now. And I'm going to go ahead and add a layout. And I'm going to put in here just that demonstration title. Nothing really exciting. So you can see, and I'll make this a little bigger. All it is just a block at the top of my screen, which has this information in there. I'll go ahead and save this as control bar list search, and we'll go ahead and put that in here. Okay. So as we had before, we need a list control. So I'm going to have Alpha do most of the work for me. So I'm going to go in here, and what I'm going to do is have Alpha do two things. I want to show you both methods for how to handle this, but I want to show you the super easy way first. So first, I'm going to go here to the end of my panel header because I want it to be in my panel card. I'm going to go over to data controls and find my list control right here. And then I'm going to just go list customers. And I'm going to go to the quick setup Genie. And often I like to use the quick setup Genie because it does a lot of the heavy lifting to get everything ready. And then I can go in and modify the look, feel, etc. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm in here. We're going to use a connection string to a SQL database. It doesn't have to be that way, as we've done before. You can essentially use different methods to connect to your data. So I'm going to select my AA demo Northwind. Now I'm going to go field from a table. I'm going to select customers. And now that I've selected customers, I'm going to select a few little links here just to put some stuff on the screen. And then I can filter it, tie it to other things along those lines. Now, I want to go ahead and do a search part. So this is the part where Alpha is going to do most of the heavy lifting. So I'm going to include a search part and their individual controls. And the fields I'd like to have it search is really just, let's do company name instead of customer ID this time. We'll do a company name. So I could select multiple ones and it would create multiple fields for that. So I'm not limited to one, but for today, I just want to focus on one field, how to use that from there. Okay. So I'm going to have it create this capability for me so I don't have to do any coding or writing or anything like that. Okay, let's go down here. I'm not going to worry about disconnected operation, although I could do that. And I'm not really going to worry about a detailed view at this point in time. Again, both of those are capable. You're welcome to do those if you want. So I click OK. And so it's going to create it. So it created my list control. It also created a container that had a search field, a search button, and a clear filter button there. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And now I'm going to go into working preview and just show you what it looks like. Not pretty yet, but you'll see we can clean this up. Okay. So you can see on the top, and I'll leave this as mobile. You could make this not mobile, so it looks, you could make it desktop so it's tighter, a compact theme. But you'll see we have our list, our static text here. That's all we're doing up here. You'll see we have our area to do the search here, and then it's populated and brought in my list here. So now if I go to company name and I type in, say, around and click search, it does the search within here. So what's nice about the search too is that, let's just do AR, it's going to find anything with AR. So you can do, whatever kind of search there. So it's a really nice, easy way to do fast kind of queries. And again, I could have multiple fields here if I wanted. You can take more control of this search process using other techniques, but this is a quick and dirty way to put that search capability there. If I clear it, it's going to clear that and reset my fields there. So a couple things I want to do is that now what I want to do is basically take this interface and move it into my control bar here, and then recover and take over and use my area here for my full list control. So let's go through those steps. Now, again, what's nice is we're just doing a migration step, and I'm going to come back after I finish this, and I want to show you how I could have created this after the fact. Let's say I created my list of customers and I wanted to go ahead and create these. I got to show you there's this really cool technique that Alpha will do it for you. It's really fun and very simple on how to do it. It's something good because sometimes you'll get halfway through a project and you go, oh, I need to add a search. You already have everything set up. You don't want to recreate everything from the get-go. So there's a nice technique on how to do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move this container up into the panel header. Okay. So again, the control bar is going to display, and then it's going to display this below it. But then I can go to this container and I can just say 1 = 0 for the show height expression. And even though this is here and I'm just keeping it there temporarily, it won't show up when I run my demo. Now that my list of customers is the only thing that I have in my panel card, I'm going to go ahead and click Fill Container, and now it's going to fill that container. I'm going to save it because save often. And now you'll see we have our control bar, and we have our nicer, larger group of customers here. But you'll see those controls are actually here. They're just hidden below the control bar, between the control bar and here. And again, don't really need them now because we're going to recreate that here. So let's go ahead and do that. So the first step I want to do is go into my control bar and create my controls so I can kind of build the user interface I want. So I'm going to go into my control bar. And the way we do that is through creating a series of items. So the first item we need is a really cool one called the edit item. And that's where you can put basically a text box in your control bar, which is really powerful because you could use it to data entry. I mean, it's whatever you want to do with it. So I'm going to call that edit filter term. Okay. So now I've got my edit filter term, and very important, when I create an edit filter term, I need to have an associated data item. So I'm going to go over to data, and I'm going to just create this called filter term, and I'm going to leave it blank. Now, for people who are new to this and new to the control bar, what a data item is, think of them as variables that are associated with the control bar. So these are variables that you can define. And then the cool thing about it is that you now can set them and read them. So that's what we need. When we actually type in the information for the edit filter time, we actually need to put it into filter term. So we can't read it directly from this control, but we can read and write that data from the data element. So if you're going to use any edit field, you need to make sure that you go and create a associated data item to be able to use. So let's go ahead and just make this 100 pixels for the width there. So now I have my edit item. When anybody types anything in this edit item, it's automatically going to set the value of this filter term. And now that I have that filter term, I can then run, say, a search parameter. I could update another field. I can do anything you want. So it makes it pretty simple that once you have the edit and you've tied them together, that's all you need to do from that standpoint there. Now, as before, we have two buttons. We have a search and a clear filter. So let's go ahead and add a search here. So this is going to be a button control. So I'm going to call it button search. And I'm going to create another button here called button search. So I'm not worrying about the code. I'm just kind of building what my components will be of my user interface. So we've got our term, our edit control, and we have our 2 buttons here. Now, as you saw in my demo, I'm just using icons because it makes for a very tight representation. You can use any kind you want. So if I go here to button search, you'll see currently it's filter. It's text only, excuse me. So when I put it on the control bar, it's going to render it as a piece of text that's clickable. And that's our button that's got text. But you don't need to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and select image only. I'm going to go to the icon here, go to SVG, and I'm going to look up what's called the magnifying glass. And so we have a search magnifying glass. Okay, great. Now I'm going to do the same thing for clear. I'm going to change it from a text only to a image only. I'm going to go to icon and select magnifying glass, but I'm going to use the X to show the idea of getting rid of it or removing it, clearing it. But you can pick anything you want from there. So now we have our basic components, which are 2 buttons, one for searching, one for clearing, and then our edit filter term on that there. So now we can go in and lay it out. So we're going to go, now that we have our items, we have our data that's going to be tied to our edit, we can go to our layout. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to open up my first row here. By the way, if I wanted to, I could add, let's go ahead and do that just to show you how flexible it is. Let's say I wanted to leave that top portion, but I wanted my search stuff to be on the second row. Let's go ahead and add a line. And let's go ahead and put in my edit filter, my search button, and my clear button. So now this is going to show up below it here. So you can actually see a little representation of it. Looks a little better. You have 1 row up top and then my search stuff here. And what's really cool is you can show and hide layouts, and that's what we're going to talk a little bit is where, depending on where you're at, you may be on a certain, let's say you had 5 panel cards. This panel card has list customers. You could say, oh, okay, let's use layout 1 for this panel card. And then when panel card 2 comes up, we don't need this filter stuff. So we'll hide it and we'll make something else. So it really makes it flexible. That's why that powerful technique that's in the new release that shows how to link panel cards to control bars make your life really easy. But let's go ahead and check this out and see what it looks like so far. So bear with me as I save it, do a working preview. And you'll see now we have 2 rows up top. And then we have our search buttons right here. They don't do anything yet. Notice it's saying it's not defined. And I can go ahead and type in here, nothing going there. I may want to put a little text. Let's put a little text in front of that so that it's not so mysterious. Now, again, if I want to conserve space, I could take these and put it on this same row. So I'm not limited to having it on a separate row. I just did that for demonstrations here. So let's go back into our control bar. Let's go to our items. And let's add an item. And we'll go, this is going to be HTML since it's static. And we'll go HTML, filter title. And then we can go right here and say enter filter term. And then we go to our layout, go into here and add that to right in the front. So now you'll see that instead of just that blank, it actually has something to tell them that there's something there they can do. So we got it, looks a little nicer. And again, that's the fun thing about the control bar. You can just kind of start tweaking things, moving them around, changing them. A lot of really fun things you can do with the control bar. So now you have inner filter terms, so it's there and there. Again, note there. So now our last step is basically a translation. And there's one little trick that we need to do. So you'll notice in here we have our search component here. We have our button search and our clear filter, okay? So if we look at our search, you can see what's going on here is that it's basically doing a search command to the list of customers. So search is built into it. In fact, if I go into my list of customers and I go to the search part, notice there's a search part. By the way, that becomes available if you enable this search part. You'll see that it's talking about individual controls, search field, part, map, etc. So if I click here, it shows, oh, okay, company name is going to come from that search company name UX control. So we're going to leverage that in here. So first thing I want to do is I want to take the commands for executing the search right here. I'm going to copy that. Going to copy that. Then I'm going to go ahead and bear with me. Come on. Go into my control bar, and I probably would have put them on a text edit, just make it go a little faster, and we can go to our items, or actually our actions. So remember, we created these two buttons here. When we did, you'll see that it created automatically for me two button actions, button search on click and button clear on click. If I go here, you'll see we have button search and button click, but it's just put in some dummy code here. So when we search that click, we just want to trigger it here. So now I'm just pasting in the code that was on button search into the action for this button in the control bar. There is an alternative where if you want to keep these buttons in there, you could just go ahead and tell it to click that button, but I'd like to move it actually here so it's a little more manageable. So we go here. Okay. So now what will happen is, and for a moment here, watch this. I'm going to go ahead and show this again because I want to show how this is working. So now we have the actions moved into those buttons, and I can show it right here. Let's go ahead and do this. Bear with me. Okay, so if I type in, let's say, Thomas, I'd have to put a little space there. I click search, you'll notice it does it there. Oops. Oh, it's under company name, BLA. Okay, let's go ahead and clear the filter here. But if I do ANA and click here, watch what happens. It's basically just essentially the same as clicking on that button here. If I go here, does the clear, and off the races there. So all I did was take the code from here to here and move it here. Now I'm going to use a trick. I don't need these buttons anymore because the user will never be clicking these buttons. They're always going to be here. But I'm going to do a trick. Now the trick is, right now we enter in our data here. What I really want to do is enter the data in here. And what I'm going to do is when I enter the data in here, it's going to actually insert it into this hidden field. And then when I click on here, that data is here. So I'm kind of using a trick, but it makes my life easier. I do less coding to get this to work because it's already wired up and ready to go. Again, there are other more advanced JavaScript functions where I could literally read the value of it and then execute the search without having these other things. But I like to keep things simple. And this is hidden so they'll never see it. So let me go ahead and show you in there how we do that. So remember, we have our search, I called it differently here, but we have our button search and there. But notice we have also our search parameter, which is the same. And I apologize, I didn't keep the names the same here. So what I did is this, and this is all I have to do. What I want to do is when I click this button in the control bar, I basically want to take the value of our data item and copy it into company name. So I've already got that worked out. So I'm just going to copy this out here and I'll walk you through how to do that. So let's go in here. Let's go into our control bar. Okay, so notice that we have our two buttons, button search and button clear. So with button search, what I want to do is right now, all it does is execute that search. Now the issue is that if I have not set this search company name properly, then it's just going to be an empty. So I have to run a piece of JavaScript that's going to copy this data element here from the control bar into that hidden search field and then execute it. So again, it's a little roundabout, but it makes things pretty simple when it works. It's only one line of JavaScript. We basically have to add a code to this thing, which is what we want. So what that piece of JavaScript looks like is this. And I'll walk you through how we create it. So the first thing we do is we go dialog.setValue, object.setValue. Actually, yep. Okay. So what this is saying is when you run this little piece of JavaScript, you can set the value of a control name to a specific value. So I want to actually set this search company name. Now, I don't have to type it in because I can right click on this black area here and pick search company name. Now, here's the only little tricky part. Now we have to tell it what value. Now, the way this works is that, let me go right there. Remember we called our data element filter term. So the way you can access that, whatever the value of filter term is through the code that says this.data.filter term. So for instance, if I had another data item here, and let's call it cool data, and I had another little text box I wanted to access, then all I'd have to do in my action is say this.data.cool_data. So in this case, I'm going to go filter term. And that's all we need to do on there. So let's go, we need to make sure I use different namings on things. Let me go make sure it's all consistent here. And again, if I want to double check that, I can just click here and say search company name. Great. Now, how did I figure out that this data filter? Well, you'll see that, notice up here in my little JavaScript code that's always put in here, you'll see that it says this.data refers to all of these elements here. So anytime you need to refer to any of those, all you have to do is go this.data, the name of that term, and off to the races. So in my case, I am just going to set the value of this hidden field, execute the search by then clicking, then having it do the search mode here. Again, I'm using the built-in, but there are, and let me go ahead and show you where we can see there are pre-built list object filters. So notice you have this filter list piece here. You have filter client side, set filter. This is probably what you want to use. So there's different things. So if you wanted to, you could get rid of all these buttons and everything else and just code your JavaScript here. But it's up to you really if you want to spend your time doing that. So just as a recap, we're using a trick. We're keeping this search company name. That search company name is linked to the list of customers. So when I tell it to do a search, it's going to lurk in that search company. But in our case, what we want to do is actually take the term that's in the control bar, set that hidden field, and then execute it. That's the only real tricky part of this. Otherwise, it's more of a copy paste exercise. So let's go ahead and see if this works. I'm going to leave the things exposed so you can see what's going on here. So I'm going to go ahead and enter my search. So keep an eye, this is blank right now. So we're going to go ahead and put in, let's say BLA. I'm going to click search. Notice what happened. Notice this field got updated. That's that first line of JavaScript where I took the value of this edit field and set the value here. Then I said, okay, go ahead and do the search activity here. And when I click here, it goes in notes there. Now we have one last thing we have to do here, and that is set this value back to blank. And I was working on it. I think, Sarah, I think you kind of guided me on it. What I want to do is let's go ahead and go back into the control bar and go here, go to the on click, and I think what I can just do is this is equal to, I think I just have to do that, which is basically set this dot data to there, and then the system will, let's see if that worked. Hopefully it did. I think it will, but let's find out. Because I'm not using a set value, I'm actually in it, and so I have access to all that information in there. So let's go ahead and try this, see if it did. Then notice how it went away. So when I click here, it did actually clear this out because it did that automatically because of this. But in my case, I added that little piece of code that just basically said, and again, notice the nomenclature for the code. I did this dot data, then the name of my filter term. So the cool thing about that is that you can manipulate these data elements and then have your control bar update on the fly. So an example we've done before is, let's say you're editing a specific record, you want to put the title name of that record up top, you can use this same technique to basically update the data value to show the record, and then it will show from there. So that's those pieces there. So again, what I can do now is I've got to keep this in there so I can hide my control bar, my container here. I'm just having it there, 1 = 0. I can actually delete these buttons because I no longer need them. They're actually the code, I took them out and put them into my control bar. So now we can go here and let's go ahead and do a working preview just to make sure it works. So you can see it's a much cleaner interface. You don't have that big chunk of stuff. Now I can just put in here, let's say Bond, and do a search, clear it, and it just works. So that's kind of nice. And again, that's the trick, is often let Alpha build stuff and then you can just kind of move it around and adjust it from there. I do want to cover how you can create those buttons after the fact if you had a list control, and it'll only take a few minutes. But before I do that, I wanted to go ahead and open up questions to anybody in terms of what they feel on how they could do this or what they'd want.
We just have one,
Oh, wow.
so we do have a few questions, but we just have one sort of on this, and that is that just someone was wondering if you could review again, why are you doing this thing with a double set of fields? Isn't simply copying the code that's already there into the control bar sufficient to make it work?
The only trick on that is this, and this is probably my lack of knowing on how to do this.
Okay.
When you have a search part, the way that search part works is that actually all of the searching and activity is done by the list itself. So you'll notice when we created our list control, we added in a search part. And in the search part, we basically said, okay, here are the columns in the list column, and here is the field on our interface to look at. So it's a very straightforward kind of fill out the field, hit a button. And what it will do is when I say go search, it's going to go into the system. It's going to look for this control, grab that data value out, and then create a filter against that particular column. So I could have
Can I stop you? Can I stop you right there? The company, okay, great. And so you've mapped that to that control that's on the UX, but this dialog doesn't let you map it to a text box that's in your control bar, right? It has to be a control.
Yeah. So
that's really the issue. Yep.
Yeah. Now, yeah, you could know. Yeah. See, you notice that there's I can't point to my control bar because that to edit thing and that data value is inside. That's why I had to kind of leave that list control in there. That's why I'm saying this is like a quick and dirty way to do it. If I were really going to do it, what I would do is actually get rid of this search part here and just use JavaScript to create the filter and do it all within the action on the control bar itself. But I did this just because it was faster.
So if you want to use the point and click tools, you can't point to something that's directly on a control bar. So instead you use that hidden search field sort of as a proxy. Yeah. And then you can do it all point and click. And as you pointed out, one line of JavaScript, which to me sounds pretty good. Yeah. Great. Okay, cool. Thank you very much.
I don't have to worry about mistyping JavaScript other than that one line because Alpha is doing all the work of watching these fields. And then when someone says do a filter, it goes and grabs them, sets them up, and then does the actual filtering for me. So I like to have Alpha do as much as possible because the reality is they've done a lot more testing than I've done in my own code. So it makes it a little easier. So that's a really good question. And again, it looks a little Rube Goldberg because I'm keeping this search part in there. But but again, this is a great starting point. And then once you've kind of mastered this and understand like the text box and everything else, and I'll actually go ahead and do a demonstration of that. So once I've got all that going there.
That's cool. So the other question, sorry.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Throw one more in, and that is, can you go back over the JavaScript, the this.data.filter temp JavaScript that you added in order to clear the item in the control bar?
Gotcha. So when we did the on-click event, we did two things. So first is copy the filter term in the control bar to the hidden text box. Then we said trigger the actual filter using the list control. So again, I didn't write the bottom part. This is how you do that from there. Now I go to on click here. First thing I want to do is clear the filter on the list, and this will also clear the hidden text box. Now the problem is that if I don't have this, let's go ahead and just demonstrate this. Let's go ahead and get rid of that. And I'm going to go ahead and show this container so we can see what's going on there. When I actually run this, normally they wouldn't see that hidden text box, but up here, when I go ahead and type in this and hit it, it copied it and run it. So let's BLA. Now what I want to do is when I click this button here, I want it to clear the filter on the list, and I'd go ahead and do that. You notice it cleared this field and reset the filter, but notice this is still showing. So the problem is this is out of sync now with my user interface. So it's like, oh, okay. What I need to do is when I click this button, I not only have to clear the filter on the list itself, but also clear the value that's currently displayed in my edit item. So if I go back into my control bar, remember the way we got the value of that filter term was by using this .data. Well, it's a two-way street. When I type things into my edit filter term here, it automatically puts it into here. But obviously, if I put a term in here, it's going to show up there. In fact, yeah, and so that's kind of how it works. In fact, so you'll see in my action what I do is I basically, in the clear button there, I basically go this .data, the name of the data item, and I put it to empty, basically an empty string, so then it clears it out. But I could go another thing and say select again or whatever it happens to be to do it. So this little piece of code here just clears out the edit bar filter item because this command only does it for the hidden field.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
And then, okay, cool. I'll ask you a couple more questions, but I'll let you carry on first with what you were going to do.
So actually, I do want to show one other little quick, so yeah, we'll go from there. I do want to show that a couple things that are kind of cool now. I really like this list of customers. This thing is really, I use it a lot. I tend to do like this. It takes me a little bit every time to save it. I just wanted to show you that in the releases, you're going to notice there's a new heart button right here. And if I click on here, you can now access filters, or I'm sorry, favorites, excuse me, not there. So I'm going to right click on here and I'm going to add that to favorites. Now, I could add this whole thing. It's not just a single control, but I'm just going to add a single control to favorites. Okay. So now when I ever need that, I just go here, select it, and then I can go to that. So this is like this is not adding a control. That's if you want to like save a favorite to your item. But let's say you had a fairly complex user interface and you were like, had like 100 controls. You can do what's called favorites, and you could add favorites. So for instance, if I want to go to my search button, I can click there. Actually, I add it to my favorites. And now when I go here, I can go to my customers, or I can go here and go to my search. And what this basically does is I'm able to basically quickly navigate a more complex UX to be able to go places. If I want to actually save
like a bookmark in your UX kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a much better way to put it. Yeah. Now remember, and I kind of went down this road, but also remember what you can do is that if you have a favorite control you're using all the time, you can actually, and we've shown this before, you can save the selected control in a library. So the next time you need it, you can just load it out of your library. So that's kind of handy if you've got a preset set like a search form or a control bar you use all the time. Because control bars, you notice I had to go in, there's a couple ways to do it, but like if I really like this control bar, I can go in here and say, you know what, I'm going to save that selected controls to my library. I'm going to call this my cool control bar. Okay. And again, it could be local to this project. I can make it project oriented, or I can make it global, meaning if I created a whole new project. So I'm going to make that global. Now be careful on that, because if you have data assigned items that, there, but let's say I go in, create new web component, UX. I can go in here and I can literally go, you know what? I need my control bar in there. So I can say load controls. Where's my cool control bar? There we go. Now, obviously, it's not going to be wired up properly for buttons and things like that. But if I have a control bar that's already set out and looks good, boom, notice it's here, it's here. I have to set the, compact theme, etc. So this allows you to quickly save and restore components into your system, so you don't have to go through and recreate everything else. And what I usually use that for is like panel card structures, where I have certain panel card structures. I can just go whap, I have a new UX. I could save the whole UX, but often I just want to save the controls. So I have one other thing I want to talk about, but I wanted to open it up for other questions about this area before I do that. Then I can go into that other little demonstration.
Great. So can you have a search toolbar that searches two different lists?
Yes, you can. In that case, so you want to have like basically two search parameters. Oh,
So
so
two
when you,
different lists. So maybe they're, I don't know why you'd have, but maybe you'd have one with names and one with companies, for example, who knows? And you wanted to look in the,
yeah, you could. What you do is you basically have your second list, you turn on your search part, you connect it to that same control. I'm assuming you're going to use the same
right. Yep.
filter term. And then what you do is in your control bar, let's go to our search field or go to our action for the search. What you would do is you would just copy this, put that here, and then in here, if you had a second list, you could click that list. And what it does is this just says like clear the list, or in this case, search the list. So that's how you could say, take this one single term and filter two lists at the same time. And the neat thing about that is you notice that all I'm telling it to do is trigger the search. So it's linked to the list. So I could set up what control I'm looking for on one list, another control to look on the other list, or one control to look on both of them. And then the list is going to take care of, oh, I've got to go look at this control, then do my filtering statement from there. So that's how you could do that, is have. And so you can get pretty tricky with it. And again, you can use all the built-in functionality without having to write a whole bunch of JavaScript.
Cool. And now a related question is, how do you search for more than one search term? And actually the example they said is, how do you search basically in more than one field? So if you wanted to know that maybe it was the last name or maybe it was the company name, I forget which.
Good point. So let's go here. No. Oh, I'm on the wrong one. Wait, where did list customers go? Did I put it? There we go. Let's go in here. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to go to my search part here. So the way this kind of works here is that you have individual controls that map to the different items. So if you had three things, you could put three. But I believe what they're saying is that I want to search on the first name, the company name, etc.
Right.
So
can you map it to the same
do
field?
a single keyword control. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no. So in this case, you notice it's individual controls. Now I can say it's a single keyword control, and the search will look at multiple fields in the list to find records that match that search value. So that's similar to the grid quick search where you could have one field and it basically goes through and looks at all the, you could select which fields. So I could go here. I select my keyword. I want to look at company name, contact name, and title. So again, this is what fields I'm going to search against. And now it's asking me which control. Well, I can point it at that company name control or something called keyword. Notice I can't point this to the control bar. So if I'm using the control bar, I still have to kind of copy it from the control bar edit item into this field. But now I can search against multiple fields. And notice I didn't have to change anything on my interface. It's just telling it this list how I want it to work. So that's kind of nice because now I don't have to create three separate fields and manage them and everything else. I can create one field and say, okay, when the person searches, look up in this column, this column, this column, and find any matches and show from there.
Excellent. I'm trying to go through if there are any that are directly related to this. Nope. A bunch of people asking for copies of today's control, though. That's always a good sign. You can send an email to guides@alphasoftware.com, and we are happy to hook you up with that.
Yeah, I don't have to clean up as much. I didn't screw as much stuff up this time, so I'll get that out really quickly.
That's great.
Cool.
I think that's good. If you got something else to cover, I'll go.
Yeah, I want to show one quick thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let me go back here. Oops, not in title. Go back to my design. Hit the wrong button. Okay, let's go ahead and delete this. I'm just going to create a new list box. And I'm going to do this real quick. I'm going to list customers, but I want to show you some nice little features which you may not be aware of. So I'm going to select my connection, go into customers, select my field list. Okay, but I'm not going to select this search part. So I'm going to click OK. So I've got my list of customers. It's all wired up. It's good to go. And you go, oh, put this whole UX together and I need to do some searching against this thing. So not too hard. It's not a disaster in the making. So you have to do two sort of separate steps. Step number one, you have to go into the list of customers. You'll notice we don't have our search tab here. because we didn't enable it. We can go to list properties, say we have a search part, and when we click that little button here on the list properties, you'll notice we have a search part here. So now I can go in here. So this gives me my idea of, setting those things up here. Now, you'll notice something. I don't have my little search fields. Let's say I wanted to do 3 different search fields. Well, let's go into the search part field map, and you'll notice that I don't have any controls. So I'm just going to go, I think I can, maybe. I'm going to say create a new UX control. So let's say I want to have a company name. So when I click on here, I don't actually have a field to map to it. So I can say, hey, Alpha, you create it for me. Same thing with contact name. Go ahead and create that for me. So you'll notice instead of mapping to an existing field, it's going to automatically generate a field for me and at the same time do the wiring. So that's kind of nice. So I click OK. And it will show me this only has one thing, but where do I want to put that? I want to put them before my list of customers. This is telling me what it's going to do. And let's go ahead and put it in a container. So in a few moments, notice now, if I go in here, I do have actual controls on the UX. If I go back here, you'll notice, created those. Okay, now that's step number 1. So now we have controls on our interface that are linked to that list when I click the search. But I still now need to generate that code to search that. And it's like, oh, drat. I have to go dig it out, find it. Nope, pretty easy. There's a neat feature. If you go down to define controls and scroll down till you get to list search part buttons. So again, define controls, list search part buttons. Click on that. Shows me what my lists are, so I can say, oh, I'm working with a list of customers, and I want you to create a submit search and clear search. And by the way, if you use query by form, which is kind of cool, you can add some other buttons for that from there. But I just want my submit and clear search, and I click OK. Now it creates those buttons, and in those buttons, it's written all the JavaScript for me. So if you ever have a situation where you've created a list and then you want to add searching to it, well, what you can do is in the search part, after you've turned on the search part, you can go here, go in here, and then you can actually create a new UX control for you. So I'll create the control and wire it up. And then again, to create the button so you don't have to figure out the JavaScript, you just go here to list search part buttons, select your list, select your items, boom, it's all wired up and good to go. And now let's double check, make sure everything. We have our list control. I've got my 2 fields, one's for company and contact. So let's just try Maria, click search, and there, pulls up just the Marias that are our MARs that are in there. Clear the filter, clears it. So Alpha will do all that work for you so you don't have to. Again, now you can move this into a control bar or you could put it into a hidden panel, a docked panel. The sky's the limit. But again, you want to do as minimum, again, low code, do as minimum amount of work as possible, let Alpha do the heavy lifting. And then you can focus on moving the stuff into user interface elements that make more sense for your application. So I just wanted to share that as a kind of a, I need to add this after the fact kind of process.
Very cool. Let's see what else we've got in here. I've got a couple of general questions.
Sure.
Actually, this is one of the ones that, because you're quick, I bet you'll be able to answer this one.
We'll see, won't we? Depends on the day for me these days.
I know how that works, exactly. Let me just find it real quick. And while I'm finding it, I'm cutting it. Oh yeah, this is a very quick question. No demonstration. Does the TabbedUI replacement work with Alpha Anywhere's security?
Yes, it does.
That. Yep.
Yep. The menu on the left-hand side, you can actually go into the menu and link the items in the menu to the security system. So yeah, it fully supports that within the system.
Great. And let me find, this was a good question too. Let's see if I can find it real quick. Where did it go? So many questions today, and actually, for that matter, so many people today, because this room is bulging.
Yeah, it's really, I guess people are bored or don't have places to go.
I guess so. With this many people, I hope we're all wearing masks. So that's the thing. So the question was about how do you launch a report? Here it is. How can I open a report from a UX and have it filtered by a date range?
Cool. So I'll brush on that quickly. So I want to open a report and then I want to filter it. So the first thing you need to do, see if I have any reports here. Let's go ahead and create one. I think I can do it. Let's try this real quick. Let's see, this is going to be a challenge. Let's see, I've got
6
about
minutes, 10
6
seconds,
minutes.
but I think you can do it.
Okay, I think so. And I'm not going to explain what I'm doing, so you can slow this down, like, oh, put it in slow-mo after it. Okay. Oh, wait, no, cancel. And I want to have city, define arguments. So I'm creating a report here using the quick report. I've selected, I'm going customers, here are the fields. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an argument to this report. And that argument is, let's call it city, and it's type category. Okay. Now there's two ways to do this, by the way. I'll show you in a moment. But I like to add arguments because then I can test everything in the report and have it nice. Now you'll notice right now it's showing me it's doing a select, but I want to do a where, add a new condition, do city is equal to insert argument city. So now that what that means is I can pass this city into it as an argument and it'll run that report. Okay. So I can test this there. We'll go Berlin. This is just for there. Okay. And we'll go ahead and just put these here, do a preview. Okay, I might have to do it. Let's see. Oh, let's go ahead and save this. We'll just type this as city report. Oh, wow. What's going on there? No, I might not be able to do it in 5 minutes here. Okay.
In normal times.
Wow. I haven't actually got, so let's go to city report. Yeah, something's up on it. So let me go back. Oh, man. The dangers of using a pre-release. Actually, let me try it again. We'll do it a different method here. So I'm going to delete this. I think I can even do it in this amount of time. So we'll create a new report. Okay. I'll show you the method too. City, customers.
Customers. Mm-hmm. Choose the city field. Yeah.
If this blows up, let's go. Okay, and we do a preview. I must have done some wrong there. Okay, so I have this report. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to my control bar or go to I'm going to add a button here. I'm going to go city filter. I'm going to add a text box called city. Okay, and we're going to default this to London, just so when it runs, don't do there. Okay, so I've got this button here, city filter, and then I've got something I can put in the city. So I'm going to open up that button. I'm going to add action JavaScript. I'm going to type the word report. So you'll notice one here called open or email a report label or letter layout. So we select the report that I just created. Okay, now notice what happens. If I have arguments, I can pass in arguments. That's my preferred method, but something's up, so I can't do that. But notice I have Sql Filter here. So let's go ahead and build this. I'm going to say city is equal to insert field from current component. There's my city field. Okay. So now what's going to happen is it's going to run this report, but what it's going to do is grab whatever's in there and pass that into it to do the filtering of it. So I'm going to do the initial view HTML, and I'm just going to do it in a pop-up panel. Click OK. And let's go ahead and do a chance here. So you'll notice now I have a button in a text area, and it's defaulted to London. If I click city filter, what's going on? Oh, it's access. Oh, geez, that should have worked. Oh, I know it. Wait a second here. I think I might have to do that. Which basically I'm building up the query. Let's try this here again. Then I can come back. Let's see. I've got only a minute left. There we go.
45
London.
seconds to be technical.
Yeah,
but
I
you did
know. I do like using arguments better than this method, but this is it. So, Berlin didn't have it. That was part of the problem. So, New York. Don't know. We'll see. I think if I put blank, it doesn't bring up anything. Yeah. But I know that London works. So Oh, wait, do I have a city in here? No, I didn't show the city, but that's how you do it there. So a quick recap is I created a report, then I created a filter, where I want to put in my mount. The action JavaScript, basically I create the facility filter. The important thing you need to do is you need to build it up like SQL. So it's basically going to take that raw, whatever text is in city and put it in here. So I had to say, oh, put the little single quotes around it. So when alpha, it just basically sends a where clause. It's just a SQL where clause. It's going to do that properly. And last but not least, make sure everybody has a safe and fun Memorial Day coming up.
Excellent. Well done, Dion, and in the actual amount of time.
Yeah, I know.
Dion, thank you
Just a
very
few
much for
things
presenting
broken on the
today.
way.
And thanks to all of you for showing up. So many of you, I'm so happy. And thanks
Yes.
for ask questions. If you do have further questions, by all means, send them to guides, guides@alphasoftware.com. Also, thanks very much, Sarah, for being here today. Until next Wednesday, take care and have a great Memorial Day.